Hey kids, do you like holidays? You know who else liked their holidays? The Romans.
Saturnalia,
Parentalia,
Bacchanalia.
Bacchanalia.
I thought we said we weren't gonna bring that one up.
Hey kids, you want some Bacchanalia?
Have you ever heard of a crazy party being described as a Bacchanalia? No? Me neither. But apparently it's a thing. Of all the raves and bashes throughout Roman history, there was one secretive booze fest that put all the others to shame. You thought that time Aunt Stacy got smashed off communion wine and tried to make out with the pastor was whack? Bacchanalia was a 5-day alcohol-fueled ritual dedicated to Bacchus, the Roman god of wine and fertility, served with a generous side of sex.
To give you an idea of how insane these events were, if you wanted to join the fun, you would have to participate in a 10-day initiation, where members of the cult would create loud noises using cymbals and drums. This wasn't because they wanted to spice things up a bit. It was to drown out the screams of pain.
These celebrations grew so notorious that they went on for only 13 years before being shut down by the Senate for flying in the face of traditional values. Although, some say the real reason they wanted to shut it down was because the cult was growing so quickly it would soon be able to overthrow the entire government. They're not gonna lie, that sounds like a pretty dope government to me. I mean, we could just replace school with drinking and college with orgies.
Anyways, so how did this all happen? Have patience, young Discipuli, and all will be revealed.
So Bacchanalia wasn't always the legendary drunken orgy that we know about today. In fact, it was one centered around abstinence, followed by purification by water, if you can believe that. The celebrations were thought to have originated in the Greek colonies of southern and northern Italy, and arrived in Rome somewhere around 200 BC, right after the Second Punic War. But probably the biggest difference was that they were only open to women, and took place during the day. You might even call them morally acceptable.
Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Okay, so the Fire Nation didn't attack, but you know who did?
At the very top of the Bacchanalian food chain was a priestess named Bacchanalia. Now, throughout history, progress has always been made by noble minds who looked at a situation and saw what was missing. Lincoln saw America and thought, freedom. Thomas Edison saw the world and thought, light bulbs. Bacchanalia saw a peaceful, God-fearing group of worshippers and thought, you know what this place really needs? Shots and lots of sex.
She really put the anal in Bacchanalia, didn't she?
Bacchanalia said screw it and raised the frequency of the festival from 3 days a year to a whopping 5 days a month. And you know the craziest part? When Bacchanalia decided to open the worship to men, guess who were the first two invited? Her sons. NANI? Here's how that probably went down.
Hey kids, get over here.
What is it, Mom?
When a little boy loves God very, very much, do you know what he does?
What?
He joins a cult and promises to never tell anybody about it. Now, whether this was an excuse to have long, uninterrupted orgies, or a way to get the kids more involved in praising the Lord, is unknown. All we know is this. Here's a picture of Bacchanalia before Bacchanalia gave tradition the old one too. And here's a picture of Bacchanalia after.
And then the consuls found out.
You see, Bacchanalia was not a victimless festival, even if you count out those who woke up with a severe hangover and fewer brain cells.
We're talking about the cold-blooded icing of members who refused to participate in the rituals or dared to speak out. When people began to ask questions like, hey, where'd little Timmy go? The answer was simply that they'd been carried off by the gods.
And it wasn't just members that ended up sleeping with the proverbial fishes. Bacchanalia was such a clusterfuck, I mean it literally was, that it was easier for shady activities to occur under the guise of cult business, activities ranging from forgery to poisoning and assassination.
Hey, you're not still mad at me for running over your dog with my chariot the other day, are you?
Nah, I'm over it.
I was just worrying about...
So, you wanna grab a drink at Bacchanalia later on after work?
And finally, although festivities were held under a veil of secrecy, there were times when they were less than inconspicuous. Female cult members would run through the streets of Rome with disheveled hair, carrying torches that they would then plunge into the Tiber.
Which meant that despite the best efforts of Piccola Ania, it'd only be a matter of time before the Senate announced that playtime was over.
With membership reaching an upwards of 8,000 people, the Senate just had to descend from the Curia and assert dominance. In 186 BC, the consuls Spurius Postumius Albinus and Quintus Marcius Philippus caught wind of this degeneracy from a local prostitute who was, quote, afraid for her clients and protege.
And then all hell broke loose. The Senate arrested anyone they could, and by the end, nearly 7,000 of its members who hadn't already committed suicide or fled were publicly executed. Some women, meanwhile, were handed over to their husbands or father for a more private punishing experience. Though honestly, I think in that case I'd rather be executed.
The Senate then ordered the consuls to destroy Bacchanalia throughout Rome and Italy, smashing altars and statues of Bacchus except for those which dated back before Bacchanalia.
They issued a proclamation called the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus, which forbade people from being initiated into the cult and basically put an end to all future celebrations, unless you really wanted to, in which case you could apply to the Praetor Urbanus, who would consult the Senate. If an assembly of no less than 100 senators gave you permission, you could celebrate Bacchanalia. But you could only have 5 people.
If that sounds a bit excessive, well, you're right. The strength of the government's response was unprecedented until that point in time, and some say unmatched until the persecution of Christians, which was also done by the Romans. In the end, Bacchanalia went underground, but the golden age of drunken revelry had passed.
Well, there you have it. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Senate Ruins Everything, and hope to see you...
Oh, we're not done yet.
Ugh, I hate fine print.
To be fair, we know most of what we know about Bacchanalia because of one guy. Livy, the man who thought his own age was corrupt and sought to promote moral ideas through his exploration of history. He was a social conservative, and the truth just might be that the whole event was nothing more than a bunch of horny teenagers gathered in a musty cave on the outskirts of Rome. But who knows? Let's be honest though, if his goal was to find a way to get people more interested in attending church, he might have missed a valuable opportunity.
Finally, it's worth mentioning that Bacchanalia was actually quite an interesting social phenomenon. Even though it caused the deaths of thousands of people and killed its own members, it was open to women, and was one of the few Roman events that treated different classes on an equal basis. Come to think of it, Bacchanalia was basically the Soviet Union.